The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA's heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
Hey, I'm Josh Spiegel, host of the podcast Lunatic in the Newsroom. If you enjoy journalism that drifts into mild panic, wild overthinking, and a guaranteed nervous breakdown, Lunatic in the Newsroom is for you. It's news like you've never heard before. The only newsroom with a panic button. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and gasp in horror as the show spirals completely out of control. It's not just news, it's emotionally unstable. Lunatic in the Newsroom. Listen today.
When was the moment that you had the realization that you were going to have to kiss Laura? Now, the moment when you realized, oh, this is really happening.
So am I gonna quiz you about the real first kiss?
I don't know what you're talking about, and I can't comment on that. From the heart of Hollywood, it's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show with Patrick Labyorteaux.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show. Patrick Labyorteaux, he's the one you gotta know.
Tonight's episode, Dean Butler.
Patrick Labyorteaux Show, he's the one you gotta know.
Previously on Dean Butler.
Dean Butler is Canadian-born, but as American as they come. Dean's the guy who made every 70s and 80s girl and probably their moms swoon as Almanzo Wilder on Little House on the Prairie. But Dean didn't stop there with just one iconic character devoted to a woman. He was Moondoggy the Gidget and Buffy the Vampire Slayer's dad. If there is a strong woman in need of the love of a strong man, Dean is there. Dean and I would later appear together on Jag, where he handed Bud his ass on a plate and then went to Japan to be Italian in West Side Story. Dean's decided to spill the tea in his new book, Prairie Man, My Little House Life and Beyond. But being Dean, he's ready to clean it up and make everything okay. The original boy next door, Dean Butler.
Okay, you know him as Almanzo, Manly, Moondoggy, Buffy's dad, or just play, hey, aren't you that guy? I know him possibly as one of the nicest guys in Hollywood. Please welcome Dean Butler. Hey, Dean.
Well, hi, Patrick. How are you?
Okay, so I'm doing good. I'm going to ask you this question right up front, right up top. When was the moment that you had the realization that you were going to have to kiss Laura? Now, the moment when you realized, oh, this is really happening.
Act 1, Beginnings.
Well, I think certainly in all not being clever about it, I think when we got the script, that's when it was really clear that that's what was going to happen. And I'm sure she, I don't know that I didn't panic about it. I just think this is we're crossing a line here, and that you're not going to go back from. And so that was sort of exciting because it was in advancing of the program. Laura was ceasing to be a young girl in pigtails. We never saw her in pigtails again after that episode. That was the end of that. It was hair up and more form-fitting dresses and all that. She was a young woman. It was a transforming moment in the life of the series that kiss happened. That said, so am I gonna quiz you about the real first kiss?
I don't know what you're talking about, and I can't comment on that.
Well, I've done actually. So we've done enough with Melissa and I have done enough stuff together here, enough, sort of podcasting together, where she did admit that she had a big time crush on you, and
moments after she admitted that, she came to me and said, I don't know, I was under the gun and I was flustered and I had to say someone. So I still think she's very cagey. She's just a young girl.
So you don't think she really?
She doesn't really know.
she's bobbing and weaving on that issue. Okay. All right.
Absolutely. So let me get back to this question because the reason I ask
we really know. Okay. We really know. The collective we may not be willing to say what we know, but we know.
We know. At least I know for sure.
Yeah. Okay.
And then I'm sure Melissa knows. Let me ask it in this way, okay? Because I find it very,
you want
very
to edit
interesting.
this? You want to cut this now? So
No. I'm not cutting.
Okay.
I'm not going to cut any of this. I did a movie called Heathers. Okay, so Heathers was like this black comedy, and it was really brutal in some places. And my character was this like football player that ends up in the description. You know, it's talking about Winona Ryder and Christian Slater, and it's their love story. And then in one little paragraph, it says, in the background, Ram, my character, rapes Heather, another one of the characters, right?
Wow.
And so as an actor, I'm an idiot actor who's working that night, and all I've got is 1/8 of a page where I'm in the background Heather. I don't think about what this means until we get to the set, and they're going, okay, pull down your pants. Okay, Lisanne, pull down your skirt. And you guys are going to be over here. And because you're so far away, we're going to want to see a lot of hip movement, right? So in that moment, I realized that I had not read my script really. And I wasn't thinking exactly about how this was going to go down. I looked at Lisanne and I said, look, I'm sorry for everything that's about to maybe happen or not happen. I don't know. I have no idea of, I didn't think about it. That's kind of the moment that I'm asking you actor to actor. I get it. Everyone's asking you about what's it like, Melissa Gilbert, she's underage, blah, blah, blah. But that moment, when was that moment when you realized, oh, I'm really going to kiss this girl?
This little girl.
What went through your head?
Well, I know you're looking for some really clever answer. I don't know.
No, just an honest answer, because
I think
I'm interested because there's got to be something in your stomach that either just flip flops or goes, oh no, how is this going to go down? And let me set the stage because I can't stop talking. Let me set the stage.
Okay.
You're a dude who has just joined the show, 2 months before this kiss?
It was a little more than that, but yeah, it was my first year. It was towards the end of my first season. Yeah.
On the stage is every Teamster who's grown up with, or Melissa has grown up with. 4 feet from you is Michael Landon, who is practically her father at this point on the show and behind the scene. Behind him, obviously, is Barbara, her mom, who you write about crazily, wonderfully in your book.
That's the big one. That's the big one.
So
Barbara
you're
is
there.
The real wild card.
What is going on?
Yeah, and I think I think there have been a few questions during the week about, or people coming up to me saying in advance of the scene, you better be good to her. You better not do anything that would embarrass her or make her uncomfortable, those kinds of things. But really it was Barbara crying out as the lips came together. Not just once, not twice, but 3 times on successive takes until Michael had had enough. And he stepped away from the camera. He went back into the dark void behind the camera where there had to be 200 people. I mean, there were so many more people. Yeah. So, I mean, it was really a packed house. Now, as you know, being on the soundstage, because of the nature of what a soundstage is, beyond what Teddy had lit for the scene, and I'm referring to Ted Voigtlander, beyond what Ted had lit for the scene, you couldn't see anything back there. There was no ghost light, no work light. It was just darkness on the other side of the camera. But what we heard was Barbara crying out that this was happening. And I always had this feeling like, now, Melissa's asked me not to say this because I said it on another situation where, I said I never had a great deal of confidence that Barbara particularly was pleased that I had been hired to do this job with her daughter. Melissa assures me that that's not the case, and it hurt Barbara. So Barbara, I apologize for hurting your feelings if you're listening to the Patrick Labyorteaux show today. That I maybe thought that you weren't thinking I was the best choice for your daughter to be playing this moment, but it was a little disconcerting, and I think that really became the moment, that first crying out like, oh my, what are we doing here? I mean, this is really a big deal, because you've got, right. And Melissa knew it was a big deal because her mother never came to the stage, or rarely came to the stage. So she was there that day for that moment, along with network executives and, friends and people that we just never saw on an ordinary basis. Mm-hmm. And of course you couldn't see, when you're in a theater, you may not be able to see the audience, but you can feel them. You can feel that right. Human presence, that energy is coming at you. People are there. But it was the cry out, Patrick, that was the big moment. And it, I just felt like it had to be handled. I knew it had to be handled carefully. After Barbara cried out, I think it probably added a little bit more caution to the moment, and It had to be very gently done. It was a very chaste little kiss. I mean, anybody who could replace that.
Look, I think
the lip
anyone
contact
watches
was
the scene,
barely there. I mean, it was like a little touch. That was it. There was no pressure on that kiss at all.
No, and my comment about Barbara is, now I am a member of the Little House family. I was on Little House,
yes,
of course. I knew Barbara.
Yes.
But again, I was a kid. Okay. I'm a kid.
Yeah.
I'm there. And this is my opinion. This is not, I don't know if this is true. I just remember thinking, oh God, Barbara, you're such a queen. It's like, I felt that she was making more of it than what was happening, because she wanted the attention. That's how I felt as a kid. It's how I feel now. You may feel differently. It may not even be true. But I remember being there on the set, and you're exactly right. It was extremely dark through the rest of the set because Mike wanted everything kind of like focused on this one scene.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I don't know if you remember this. I do. Maybe I'm wrong. But I remember also back in it was 78, 77, somewhere in there. It was the very first years of little handheld video games. And these were just like blipping lights. They weren't even like a video game, but they made sound. And we had like this one football game. And one of the kids, not myself or anyone that I knew, but like one of the other children that were there, was playing one of these games while they were shooting right when you were doing your scene. And they heard the bleep. And it was the only, or not the only, one of, I think, 3 times I've ever heard Michael yell. And He said, what the fuck was that? Get that noise, find it, get it off my set. And it was like, you never heard Michael yell, at least the kids didn't.
Yeah, right.
And it was
right.
I remember that happening because it was like this really sensitive scene. So I don't know if that, do you remember that, or is that just me?
I don't remember that, but I think, I was sort of lost in the moment. So I didn't, other than Barbara crying out, that's what I remember. Yeah, I don't remember any other disturbance. I can't imagine that. I mean, it doesn't surprise me at all that Michael, who had absolute control over that set, would have responded not to so you have the one disturbance, but then another disturbance. So what the hell is going on here? This is not what.
Yeah,
goes
he would never
on
respond to Barbara
set.
like that. But it was like, yeah, exactly. It's so unprofessional for that noise to happen. I mean, even as a kid, I shuddered when I heard it because as a child, when you're a child actor, when the bell rings, you are silent and you do not want to be the problem.
Right. Yeah.
Okay, good. So I want to talk about your book. Okay, and I have a quote here. I'm convinced that it won't be long before every human being with an internet connection and a microphone will host a podcast.
Well, here we are.
Do you stand by that?
Well, we're all doing these things, and
yeah.
I think mean, this is the the next stage of carving up audiences into finer and finer pieces of specific targeted interest. And I think that's sort of the fascinating thing about all this is this world that we're in now is not about largest or lowest common denominator. This is about the world we're in today is about targeting very specific audiences and seeing how much of that audience you can scoop up along, in your program. It is not surprising to me that, well, that's cool that you would quote that, but I absolutely believe that. It's a little hyperbole. Not everyone.
Okay, I have another quote. I have another quote here for you.
Okay.
You call yourself. This was like my favorite quote in the book. A perfect benign object. Do you feel that way about yourself?
I think in the context of what I was doing on Little House, I was a perfect benign object. I don't think I was saying that.
I think you're right.
In front of me. I don't think that I was. I don't feel that way necessarily about myself. But look, Patrick. I'm not a dangerous character. I have never been a dangerous character. I have always been, pretty respectful of what's going on around me. And I certainly have moments of irreverence, but, relatively few of those moments. But I think in the context of Little House, I think the whole purpose in hiring me, or the whole logic in hiring me, was that I would be an object, at least initially, that would never act out on, or that the audience could believe she was totally going to always be totally safe with, and certainly respected by that she was going to be respected by me once the relationship turned. I mean, everybody knew who had read the Little House books when the introduction of Almanzo, or as Almanzo, as we said on the program, appeared. Those people knew what was coming. So,
Right.
And for others who hadn't read the books, I'm sure they're wondering, who is this? What is this wacky name that we're hearing? It's like they'd never heard that name before. But, I could not be somebody. I mean, Melissa or Laura could never be in danger with Almanzo. Never. I mean, it just.
Well, here's the thing that I find interesting.
That would have been a real plot.
I actually, I read your book, or I listened to the audiobook, and I think you did a fantastic job reading.
Oh, well, boy, coming from you, I mean, Patrick, if you're really meaning that, coming from you, that's high praise, because I think you do this work so well.
I really. I thought you did such a good job that it occurred to me that I wondered, have you ever considered, a career in show business?
Oh man!
No, listen.
If I could have had my dream job would be to do what you did for years on Fox and other things. You have this incredible sound, but you also have this great intelligence with the way you read things. The sound is not as important as the intelligence, but you do have a great sound. I just love being heard. That's a huge draw for me, is to be a voice of authority. That voice, as is referred to in so much narrative work, the voice of God. Right. I like being that voice that is all-knowing and the provider of truth in a particular, or the truth of the piece. I really like that task. With my own book, I haven't listened to the recording from front to back. I was there.
I hope you were there.
Yeah, I loved doing it. I loved doing the read because it's sort of a dream gig for me to be able to do something like that. And
well, anytime an author,
if you think it was well done, it makes
book,
me happy.
Here's what I honestly think about the book. Okay, because I didn't know what to expect, because obviously I've read Melissa's book, I've listened to Melissa Sue's book, and I've read Allison's book. But listening to your book, what I thought was really wonderfully unique about it is the circle has gone so far around that you are the unique voice now, in the sense that you have a very normal life. And I want to recommend your book to anyone who is considering a life in the business, or movies, TV, theater, or anything, because you give an account of a honestly normal person finding their way into the business. Name any book, from like Melissa Sue was an actress, or Melissa Gilbert was from a family. I've been in this business since I'm 3 years old. Allison, obviously. And any of these autobiographies, it's like it's like, what was it called? Behind the Music, minute 28. And that's when he found cocaine. And, it's like, and then there's always this big redemption arc, which you don't have, except for that rocky road monkey you got to get off your back.
Yes, but right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Your whole story is wholesome in a way. I don't want to make too much of it, but I do find it really interesting that it's become the different type of story where it's like, I'm listening to you going, oh, that's really interesting, because I've never heard of a normal guy who has a father and a mother at home who are supporting him, who, you admit, I wasn't that great in school, or I didn't do as great, which to me seems like C's and B's, not like you were getting run out of town and it's like you don't talk about a learning disability. You don't talk about a drug addiction. You don't talk about, I had my time in the gangs. It's like, there's none of that, but it's still fascinating because your life is truly interesting. And in fact, at some point, it got less interesting when you joined Little House, because I know that part. And so I'm like, it's like the Little House part, the thing that, is interesting about the book for the people who pick it up, Prairie Man.
Right.
It was the least interesting for me, obviously, which, by the way, obviously Prairie Man was about me, and you had to tell all of your story of like how you got there until you got to me. And here's the quote. Let me see. Let's see. Book.
Wow, you've got a list of quotes here. I mean, you've got a whole rundown
yes.
of quotes.
Obviously, the book Prairie Man is about me, and you take a while in your own backstory to get to the meat of the book. And here's what you say about me. Matt and Pat Labyorteaux were very different kids, but both were wonderful on camera. That's all you say. And then you spend the rest of the book again talking about yourself. You thank 42 people from Little House on the Prairie. Do you remember where I was on that list?
Did I not thank you on the list?
I wasn't on that list, Dean.
Wow.
I wasn't on that list.
And I asked for karmic forgiveness at the end of my acknowledgments, saying, I know I've screwed up here. I think one of the interesting things about writing a book is once you say it's done and you've had to give it to the publisher because they need a locked text to do all the work that they need to do, that's when you start racking your brain thinking, oh my God, I left out this and I left out this and I wish I'd left out this. I mean, all these kinds of things come back because it's out of your hands now. And we moved through, or I moved through the process of doing this, and I had an editor following along after me to try and, when I turned in my first draft, it was 220,000 words. What got published was about 93,000 words. So a lot went away. A lot went away. And my contract, and anybody who's done this before, my contract was it had to be between 75 and 85,000 words. So I went beyond the high end of the guarantee. But I was, as I was starting to write this, I'm thinking, oh my God, how am I going to write 85,000 words? How am I going to write 75,000 words? I don't know how I'm going to do this because, what the writing I've done now, and you've done, I've written a lot of things that are descriptive things that are like talk show scripts and packaging, biographical packaging and that sort of thing, which are,
Right.
at the outside in a talk show script when you're transcribing and writing the linking material, maybe it's 30 pages long. And I've written a lot of those kinds of scripts and tweaked those kinds of scripts, and then packaging that's, a dozen pages, that kind of thing. But that's different than writing something that is prose and it's about yourself and your life. That's a much different thing to do, and it's a little daunting when you sit down to start.
Well, I can imagine. I haven't done it. I don't think I'm ever going to do it.
You'd write a hell of a book. You would write you have a very interesting story.
I thank you for that, but I think that I do that with the TikToks because I just don't find I find it very difficult I find biographies and films like that are filmic biographies very difficult because you're squeezing everything in a life into a certain short period of time. But I thought you did a really good job. And as a man, what I thought was really fascinating when I was listening to your book was your relationship with your dad. You talk about your mom, but she's like a smaller character than your father. And I'm going to get the quote wrong.
And yet hugely more impactful on my life than.
Well, that's my question.
My mother is a huge presence in my life. Huge.
But the way that you describe your father, I would say is the fulcrum for a lot of your life choices based on that one super insightful quote of "There's nothing here for you." When you when you run up to the court convertible, and it's such a random thing. And immediately, as a father, I went through my life with my son, going, "Have I said anything like that?" Because it's so innocuous if you're thinking of it from an adult point of view.
Sure,
like he could have been running back, and it could have been a million things, but it affected you. I think sneakily and hiding in plain sight is this huge revelation in this book about your life, which reads very simply, but I think is very important. Would you, obviously you wrote about it. It seems to be a turning point.
No,
is that a big deal in your life?
Yeah, it is. No, it absolutely is. And I think, I could say that moment has been affected my relationship with every male authority figure in my life. The sense of to have your father on your birthday when you're pretty just excited because it's your birthday, come down pretty strongly and say, "There's nothing here for you." Now, look, there were lots of things in the house. There was a cake and there were presents and there were all that. But when your father looks at you and says, "There's nothing here for you," and says it in a way that's pretty like slamming the door on any sort of anticipation that you might have had, it made me forever cautious with him. For the rest of my life, for the rest of his life, I was cautious with my father because of that moment. I never forgot it. I knew this was a moment that I was going to write about when I started doing this book. And I guess and I'm not a father myself. You're a father. I'm a faux grandfather because Catherine has a son from her first marriage and he has 2 children and I get to be grandpa. But it's not this. It's not, with all respect to that, it's not the same as if Catherine and I had children together and I was grandpa. I love these kids. They're great, but it's a different thing.
Right.
What I guess what strikes me about that moment is as parents or as adults, when you're in that situation of having an effect and just a huge impact, everything you say and do is being absorbed by the children around you like a sponge, because that's just what kids are at that point in their life. They're taking everything in and they're processing it. And it all is, as kids tend to be, it's all very personal. It is about them. They are causing whatever is happening. There's no perspective like at that time. I mean, now I can look back on it and say my father maybe had a really bad day at the office, really bad day.
But the way that you ran up to the convertible, your emotional moment for that was anticipation and expectation, which a father probably should intuit and say, sorry, but I don't have anything here, but let's go inside and find something for you. But the way it came out, how did that, you say it affects you with male people going back to Little House. There's not a better example of a patriarchal society than Little House, which was, his name was Pa, his name was Michael. He ran the show like he was everybody's dad, which everyone, so many children on the set, so many broken acting children loved the fact that Michael was exactly what you would want him to be. And you say some stuff that's really great in your book about he's different to different people. To the kids, he behaved one way. And I have a theory. I think Michael, everyone just calm down. I think Michael was jealous of you, or at least saw you as a threat. Because if you think about Little House, there was no good-looking guy on Little House. He was Little Joe. He was the good-looking kid on Bonanza. Haas was his older brother. Merlin Olsen was his older brother. Victor French was his older brother. There were the older gentlemen. There was Doc Baker. There was the pastor. There was all these people, all these men, and then the guest stars that would come and go. There's Gil Gerard, but he wasn't there. So it's sort of like, I think at some level, whether it's subconscious or not, Michael felt threatened by having an attractive young man like yourself in the show and treated you as such, because even as a kid and not reading your book, I always sensed this weird discomfort that was happening on the set when Michael and you were together. Do you have any thoughts about this crazy theory that I'm proposing?
Wow. I'd be very flattered if Michael wasn't somewhat jealous of me. That's sort of if that theory is accurate, I don't know. I know that when that first moment with him, and you've obviously read the book, and I deleted the expletives for the expletive for the for the youthful audience that's likely to pick up this. But you've already, I think, haven't you already dropped an F-bomb or two during this?
Yeah. Oh yeah. No,
right?
It's
yeah.
That's the show.
Yeah. After my first scene, and I'm very nervous, I'm stepping, this is like the first thing. I'd already almost killed 2 horses, in a buckboard, driving them into a tree, and we had to get the scene done. We did the scene, and, Michael is Michael's the reason I'm there. He, no one else said yes. No one else had to say yes. He had to say yes. So when I walked up to him and asked very benignly or sort of, nervously, was that okay? This was just like there's the nothing here for you moment. When he responded to me, I'm not going to pull it for you. How the fuck would I know? I've only been doing this for 20 years. Now, I've had people say to me, he was kidding. You weren't there, I say to those people. That's how he said that to me. And all the lightness and warmth and fun that was around him after I almost killed the horses was completely gone when I asked him, was that okay? Now, I processed for myself why that reaction happened, but it was devastating in the moment in that first hour I was on that set, I really thought I was going to get fired before the end of that first day.
We'll be back after these messages.
Hey there, my name is Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV. And I also have this acting school called Working Actors School. And what we do there is we teach people to act using Zoom. So you can take an acting class with me and with a person in Connecticut, in Florida, and San Diego all at the same time, thanks to the miracle of Zoom. And I'm very excited to announce that we have a brand new class called Adult Weekly Class. Now, what is that? Now, that's a class that'll meet every Wednesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific, and you come in and you have an hour-long acting class with other students. It's very, very simple, very, very fun. So if you've ever wanted to be an actor or try it or just mess around, these classes are great. So the Adult Weekly Class is going to be every Wednesday at 5:30 Pacific. Now, come and check it out. It's going to be really fun. Go to workingactorschool.com. Check out the website. You can sign up for the class there. If you need any other information, there's a phone number and an email on the website. You can get it there. And we would love to have you come and try. Talk to you soon.
The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA's heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
This is Mike Boileau of Lexicon Valley.
And I'm Bob Garfield. Are you one of those people who sometimes uses words?
Do you communicate or acquire information with, language?
Hey, us too. So join us on Lexicon Valley to chew over the history, culture, and many mysteries of English, plus some wisecracks.
Find us on one of those apps where people listen to podcasts.
Act 2, Success.
Well, first of all, I think I'm not here to defend Michael, and Michael's a huge talent. And so what I'm talking to you about
have to
is exactly
Michael doesn't need
our
defending.
experiences.
Yeah.
The reality is that response on any set, especially Little House, which you would later find out was probably a one-off that I'd never heard. And when I read your book, I was like, geez, he really came after Dean for something that, knowing you are not the type of guy like going, I don't know. It's like, how are you questioning his direction in any possible way? And it just goes back to my theory. Again, I'm just going to keep proposing this theory that watching you drive a team of horses into a tree made him feel comfortable. There's no threat there. When you ask him, because, the guy could ride horses, drive horses.
Sure.
He was astounding.
I could ride too, but I'd never driven a buckboard. That's
Right.
was the reality.
It's a whole thing. So anyways, hearing your book and listening to that, I was like, oh, that's really interesting because it's exactly that pressure point that you have. You're innocently asking, how'd I do? The most insecure question an actor is asking, and every director rolls your eyes and goes, no, you did great, Kitty, as Michael would say. But no, not that time. So it's like maybe he was just laying down his own insecurities of like, just back off. I know what I'm doing, when you weren't questioning that at all.
No, exactly. That's how I've worked my way through it as well. I also think there was this thing, and I think you would have a sense of this because, one, you've been on a lot of sets and you certainly know what he was about. I think Michael was sending me a message to say, I don't negotiate performance. I don't negotiate.
I don't negotiate
dialogue.
with terrorists.
I don't negotiate anything. We do this. When I say cut print, it's done. And I think I wish he did later say to me, just trust me, I'm never going to let you look bad. Now, that was like 48 hours later. In the moment, that was pretty rough. But I saw evidence of that through the years. It didn't take long. I mean, there's no question. He was known by so many people as the benevolent dictator. That was a phrase, a name that was used about it. And I think that is so largely true. I mean, the vast majority of the time, he was a benevolent dictator, and the results that were achieved speak for themselves. The results were pretty spectacular week in and week out. But
there's a certain style. There's a certain style. Yeah, no, there is an absolute style of showrunner, which he was. You ran into another one of them, Don Belisario, who ran the show exactly the same way, which of course I can't get over that you, again, where's your filter, Dean? Let me get that was no, I can tell you exactly what the quote was. How many stories can you tell about a helicopter? Was the question as I was sitting down in front of Don Belisario to read for him for Airwolf, presumably for the Jan Michael Vincent, the part that eventually went to Jan Michael Vincent. This was the beginning of his process, and all he said was, this was like, minutes into the meeting, thanks for coming in, bye-bye. I mean, I never read anything. Knowing both people, I laugh at that because I know exactly how you said it and exactly how he responded. And I'm like, what is it? And just from one actor to another, why are you asking a question like that to the guy who's the writer producer? I don't know what possessed me. I did the same thing to Donna Deitch when I was auditioning for Desert Hearts. One of the first and most iconic LGBTQ plus movies out there. I'm reading for a guy who's going to lose the girl to the girl, and I ask, who's going to go see a movie about two lesbians? And she said her reaction was very different from Don's. That's perfect. Read. Right. And she hired me 2 hours. She hired me 2 hours later in the movie. Yeah.
Boom.
Okay, let's just go back. So
live by the sword, die by the sword.
Exactly. So they canceled each other out. So I have a problem with you and Catherine overall, which is you ruined my Little House career and you took my paw, which I'll go into later. That's another theory. Because when you showed up on the show, as you so well said, she was never seen in Pigtails again, and she stopped hanging out with
you're talking about Andy Garvey. You said Melissa. You said Catherine, but you meant Melissa.
No, I mean you and Catherine. I have a bone to pick with you and Catherine.
Oh, okay,
Catherine
okay.
Later,
it's right deeper. Okay, very good.
It gets deeper than that. Yeah, she stole my paw, and you stole my.
Right.
So,
yes.
Yes, exactly. So on Little House, I'm playing Andy Garvey. We're going on these crazy adventures, and then we all hear that Almanza's coming to the set or Almanza's coming to the set. And everyone's curious because no one knows anything about anybody back then. Can't look you up, don't know.
Right.
And I remember watching, I was sitting on the Mercantile porch, one of the only shady places in Walnut Grove. And I was watching Melissa and Allison run around the center of Walnut Grove, hiding behind the tree as you walked on set for the first time, trying to get a look at you. And it was the funniest thing because it was like two teenage girls just jumping around trying to see the new boy in town.
Yeah.
So when you talk about it in the book, but again, in the book, it tells the story in a consistent manner. I want to know that moment when you're first walking on not the stage, but the location. It was your first day
First day was a big
was in Simi, wasn't it?
Yeah.
So what was that like? You've got your wardrobe on, you're walking down, and my experience when walking down was when I auditioned. What was weird about Little House and Big Sky, and then I'll let you talk eventually, it was when you walk down the hill that's behind the mill.
The mill.
It's like, boom. It's sort of like, oh, wow. It's literally Walnut Grove, exactly like it looks on the TV show. And there's nothing to tell you that it's not a real place. There's no false stages. There's no anything. It's really a real place. And I remember that being kind of magical, kind of like, yeah. So what was it like for you?
I was blown away by it on a couple of different levels. I mean, my first stop was sort of the camp that the unit or the company had set up that morning in in the Little House circle. That was my landing point that day, to step in there. And then the company moved from there to town. I just remember and I had done one movie of the week in advance of this, and it was a relatively small footprint that was, as a lot of like pop-up companies are, it's just the minimal things that you need to do what you're doing. But I remember, rolling in that blue Max, or that big blue station wagon, and so driving into town in that, or up to the Little House site and seeing what looked like, 20 or 30 trucks, and the horses and the wagons were coming off the trucks, and there was the wardrobe truck and the camera truck and the makeup and hair and the prop truck. And I think the thing that I saw immediately is that everything that was needed to make this show happen on a daily basis, other than the buildings, had to come into that location on a truck that day. So like the whole Walnut Grove world was on trucks. So the sheer size of it was pretty impressive. Well, now you walk on this, and the amount of rolling stock that is coming into to shoot now is just like, it dwarfs that. But at the time,
right,
that seemed like a really big unit at the time. And then the place itself, as you say, coming down behind the mill and stepping into Walnut Grove, it was a real place. Now, I had never, interestingly, Patrick, I had never watched the show before that first day. I'd never seen it. And so, I mean, I'd seen promos.
Okay, well, wait.
Something.
I read the book. I get never seen the show before you read, but you hadn't seen the show after you got the part. You didn't watch an episode?
No. I was in college at that
Dean,
time.
what are you thinking? Why wouldn't you watch a TV show you're about to go on?
It's interesting. I can't answer that, other than the fact that I was chasing to finish college and final exams that week. And, by the time I was hired, it was down to like, I don't know, by the time I actually got the offer, I had like 3 weeks of school left, and it was, look, you're getting ready to graduate from college, and there are parties, and there are studying, and there's all this
These
stuff
are lame
going
excuses. I won't accept any of them. I know it's part of your
I
story,
didn't,
but
it wasn't until
it's weird.
Yeah.
It's weird that you didn't see an episode before you walk on the set. But
I
that's
did
a reality.
not see a full episode until Ray Bolger. I watched an episode with Ray Bolger from season 5 as he's dancing down the road with Laura and listening to this music, and watch Ray Bolger. And I'd been shooting for, I'd shot my first episode or first couple of episodes, something like that. And I was finally seeing it. And I thought, oh my God, this show is incredible. The whole
I want a hot take. A hot take from Dean. Little House on the Prairie. It's going to be a hit. Season 5. He calls it.
Yeah. Well, no, I knew from my own viewing that it was amazing after watching that first. I knew from being there it was incredibly professional. It was beautifully done. Everything worked. There was no mystery to the fact that this had been on the air for 5 seasons already, and it was terrific. But it wasn't until I actually saw, start to finish, a full episode that I knew for a fact how beautifully put together this was, and how moving it was. I was just knocked out by that. Look, I know. I asked Michael shortly into the experience, what would he advise me to read? To be really prepared to do a good job on this. What would he advise? And he didn't bat an eye. He said, the only thing you need to read is what I write. Period.
Right. Exactly.
That was it. And at the time I thought, wow, that's pretty, and I did read some other things. No, I did not read the books, the Little House books until after I was done with the series. And it wasn't until years after I was done with the series that I really sat down to read the books and absolutely loved them and saw the connective tissue between what the show was and what the books were. And I just thought it was amazing as I compared and contrasted.
Well, take it as a compliment. I've read your book. I haven't read the Little House books because Andy's not in them, so I don't care. Because I'm very self-centered.
Okay.
We'll be back after these messages.
Hey there, my name is Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV. And I also have this acting school called Working Actors School. And what we do there is we teach people to act using Zoom. So you can take an acting class with me and with a person in Connecticut, in Florida, and San Diego all at the same time, thanks to the miracle of Zoom. But we also teach kids. We have a great class called the Youth Weekly class that's every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time. And it's for kids. It's for like 10 to 17. And we have a great group of kids right now, and it is ongoing. So if you know someone that wants to get into acting and has never done any acting but would love to try, why don't you have them try starting off with Youth Weekly? Just go to workingactorsschool.com and check us out. It's Youth Weekly every Tuesday at 5:30 p.m. Pacific time.
The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA is heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
Hey, I'm Josh Spiegel, host of the podcast Lunatic in the Newsroom. If you enjoy journalism that drifts into mild panic, wild overthinking, and a guaranteed nervous breakdown, Lunatic in the Newsroom is for you. It's news like you've never heard before. The only newsroom with a panic button. You'll laugh, you'll cry, and gasp in horror as the show spirals completely out of control. It's not just news, it's emotionally unstable. Lunatic in the Newsroom. Listen today.
Act 3, present day. Here you are, you're on this TV show, okay, which is pretty freaking amazing to begin with. And then you're entered into possibly, obviously nowadays with Instagram and everything, it's like everyone feels like there's this big celebrity industry. But there was no celebrity industry like there was in the 80s, where it was, you know, I'm sure the 40s and 50s with, you know, the Hollywood machinery with Will Parsons and all of that. Yeah. But here you are in the middle of the 80s, glamour with Mary Hart, which read the book. It's a great story. How does, and I know there's 1,000 stories here, but the reality of it, which people tend to forget, is, Mary Hart, you hear the name, you think of the hair and the legs, which have their own key light and their own insurance underneath this glass
Well, that I
table.
think, yes, and that was a great story that they created about her. I mean,
of course,
she had legs to die for. I mean, for me,
which you are a leg man. If you read your book, you can't hide
and
it.
Buried when I saw those legs.
But the reality is, having married someone that I worked with on JAG, when you meet somebody in the industry, once the name and everything is gone, then you got a real person. I'm a person, you're a person, they're real people. And so here you are, just some guy from Northern California in the middle of like this glitzy, glammy Hollywood, which you could have, if you were dating someone else, not participate in, but you're dating Mary Hart, who is like the head of Entertainment Tonight. So you're invited to every single possible thing that you could possibly be.
Right.
And here's Dean from Northern California. You were everywhere there. Now, I'm not looking for the sensational. I want to know on a person-to-person level, how freaky was that? Where all of a sudden, you know, a chaste kiss in a gym you're talking about in your, you know, book about your first girlfriend, and now you're at the center of Hollywood with the it girl at every single party. What was that like? for you as a human?
Yeah, no, for me, no. I mean, look, I think that it was that old phrase, that e-ticket ride. Mary was an e-ticket ride. I mean, there's no.
I don't know that phrase.
Yeah, so you're too young for that. So there's the Disney, the e-ticket. You know the phrase.
Oh, an e-ticket ride. I misheard it. Yeah, an e-ticket.
Yeah.
For real. Yeah,
e-ticket.
I get it. Yeah.
Mary, being with Mary was an e-ticket ride. And, that was a, I mean, to put it, I want to put it somewhat delicately, but, everybody, hopefully, and I say this hopefully, everybody has that romance in their life, that love affair in their life that you lose all boundaries of reason, logic, and propriety
and reality.
And reality. And that was Mary for me. It was just off the charts. I was, it was chocolate chip cookies and Rocky Road ice cream, and okay,
slow down, bad boy, slow down.
Yeah, exactly. But it was, it was just amazing. She was beautiful. She was incredibly sexy. She was confident. She had access because of her job to everybody. Everybody knew her, and everybody wanted to be interviewed by her or featured on that show. It was really.
How do you deal? But I mean, from a small town boy, and on a small town TV show, because it's Little House, Walnut Grove.
Right.
It's not like you're portraying.
No, it wasn't like I was on.
It wasn't
like I was on Dynasty or something. Yeah, it was
exactly. So there's Mary, the person that when you guys are back at your house is different than Mary Hart on Entertainment Tonight. Yeah. How did you? Obviously, I get it. No, the love affair with the real person is real, but then this circus that's around you, this '80s, that's literally as big as the shoulder pads everybody was wearing.
Yeah.
How did you fit in with that?
I didn't handle it. Yeah, I didn't handle it very well. I mean, I wish I had been. Ultimately, I had a hard time with the level of energy that was coming at her from men, from women, ultimately, I did not. Are
you a jealous guy?
I don't like to think that I am a jealous person, but I became a very jealous person, and that becomes, if you're going to become unattractive, just start being if you want to become really unattractive, just start being a really jealous person. There is nothing that's a faster turnoff to somebody than that. And I couldn't help it because I was just so head over heels lost in this.
I'll back you up too. I usually think jealousy comes from an insecurity about a person thinking that they don't have the goods to be with somebody. But
there you go.
When you've got all of Hollywood coming onto your girlfriend in front of you on camera, that adds another layer that I don't think I could deal with, and again, it's just sort of like it's such a big, not only emotionally was this person your crazy romance in life,
Absolutely.
Which I agree with. I think
intense.
It was also a crazy, intense reality that I don't know. We were driving a couple months ago and you told me you dated her and I had no idea. And I'm like, what was Dean doing with Mary Hart? Not that you weren't capable of being in a relationship, but that it was like, that's like just the weirdest combination of levels of sort of.
Yeah. It was wild.
I never saw you as being so like, out there celebrity as that would
right. No, exactly. It was what was really interesting, and I write about it in the book. The day that she a day that she came to Big Sky. It was it was in the 9th season. She came to Big Sky, and obviously Michael was there, and he knew very well who she was. And it was interesting that he was deferential to her in a way that I had never seen him be deferential to anybody. And he asked her very specifically, I'll never forget, that as they were just casually having a conversation, he asked her very directly, is what we're talking about off the record? And and she said, well, of course. I mean, we're just, she's not there doing the story. Now, you can't help but hear what you hear and see what you see, and everything's going to go into that mind of hers, and she's going to remember everything about that encounter as she's thinking about who is Michael Landon. She's going to be taking things in, but there was nothing about that meeting that was going to be directly processed into anything. And I remember being blown away, Patrick, by how easy she was with him, because she'd been with everybody. She had been in high pressure professional situations with everybody, and there was nobody she couldn't talk to. I could never talk to Michael the way she talked to Michael. And I think that blew me away, that she had this ease of confidence in dealing with him that was nowhere present in my dealings with him. And I think that pushed me back a little bit when that happened. I saw him. Well, I think what it is it's that was in a way that I never felt like he was deferential to anybody, and he was deferential to her on our set.
It was a reference point in your own life, separate from Mary, that was different than, because you could go to any amount of premieres and see major movie stars talk to her, and it's not the same as when she talks to Michael, because Michael and how, like you said, he's the benevolent dictator, and here my girlfriend is talking to him as an equal, and I'm not an equal with him, and that's a weird feeling.
It was a weird dynamic. It was a weird dynamic.
It was weird because I remember my brother and I were interviewed by Mary at our house by our pool the year that Entertainment Tonight went on, prior to it premiering. It was like they were getting reports done. And it was like one of those things where she came out and she wasn't Mary Hart yet. Right. I mean, she was, but you know what I mean.
But she wasn't. Right.
I just remember how amazing how sweet she was, how beautiful she was, and how professional she was. And then years later, I saw her at an event, and I went up to her, and now she's Mary Hart, and she knew exactly who I was, and was a very, very kind person. And it's like, anytime I see that, I'm like, oh, okay, these people are really, really on it. I want to move on into.
She had an uncanny sense of memory about people, and she'd remember names. She'd know where she met you. She could tell you what you talked about. I think she was extraordinary that way, and is extraordinary that way.
You talk about an editor that you worked with on the Faraday Show, knowing the content library over at the Golf Channel. I have a feeling Mary Hart knew the Entertainment Tonight content database just as well.
Did. Yeah.
Okay, so before we end this, because we're getting close, but I got to talk to you. So Little House is one thing. You later went on. You later went on to be Moondoggie and Gidget, and I'm laughing because it's like, of all the people in the world to play a surfer, and through your whole book, literally your complexion is the exact wrong guy to hire to be in the sun for 1,000 hours a day. Why? How is that? How did that happen?
I wasn't in the room, but I think, Barbara Corday, who was running Columbia Pictures Television at that point, she was in the room. A director named Bruce Bilson, who was directing our pilot, Bruce was in the room. Karen was in the room, who had already been hired to be Gidget. Who knows why these decisions get made? I sort of believe, and I know you understand this, but this is my theory, is that, when we come into rooms to audition, we're bringing our whole lives in the door with us, and people intuit things about us immediately. And I think that regardless of my pale skin complexion, that I was going to be, look, I've been dealing with skin cancer for 20 years now, and the damage was done before Gidget, I can tell you. But, this is just like reality. That was not a place that I really should have been from a pure health standpoint. But I think I came in the door with the right stuff that they were, and this, you've sat in so many rooms. Actors walk in the door, and if you're sitting there evaluating, immediately if this is someone who could do this. Doesn't mean that they're going to do it, but instantly that this is someone who could. And you also know instantly this is someone is never going to be in this situation. I mean, and you just know it. I think that, what I brought in that was sort of evident from Little House was a certain kind of man. This was going to be a sort of a throwback rom-com initially. I mean, that's how the pilot movie was a very traditional romantic comedy, light romantic comedy, as you would expect from a Gidget. By the time it became a series, it was becoming a Saturday morning live action cartoon, which required a completely different kind of energy. So I went to the Groundlings knowing that it was heading in that direction. I went to the Groundlings to get loose, with something improvisational, which was incredibly useful to me. But I just think,
I don't know if we've ever talked about that, but I was at the Groundlings for 4 years as well. I was in the Sunday show, and I didn't know you were at the Groundlings until I read your book.
I mean, I just went to school.
I
just went there to go to school. I was with Randy Stone in his classes. I thought Randy was incredible. It was such a freeing experience to go to the Groundlings because, there are no mistakes. Everything's on the table. As long as you agree, you can go anywhere. And, that was a huge thing for someone who was a little judgmental about and anxious about being acceptable. There was a freedom in never say no. That's part of the rules of this. Never say no. Always add information, and I'm sure there are enough. But those are the things, the major rules that I remember that were so helpful in getting loose, because you realize there are no mistakes at that point. It doesn't.
I would also posit to you, and I know we're jumping around here, but I would also think that when you were producing Faraday, the yes and rule also applies as a producer. You agree with the talent and then add the information about how they're going to fix it. Because as a producer, you know that you cannot say no to a talent. You say yes and then end up figuring out how to fix it or do it the way they need it to be done.
Yeah, no, I think that's very true. And I loved that. I have loved that part of the work for a good number of years now, that starting with the blank page and at the end of that process, there's going to be something there that wasn't there before. And that the sort of the fully connective aspect of that and the full immersion of that was much more exciting to me than acting ever was. And I enjoy.
Well, I understand that, and I tie this back.
I know you understand that. Yeah.
Yeah, the producing aspect of it, which it's very interesting to me that you, myself, and Linwood, all actors on Little House, ended up being producers. And for me, it was definitely seeing that, you can do that. You can sit in a chair and write the next script and produce it, direct it, and edit it, and be an actor in it. And I think that when we saw The Benevolent Dictator that was Michael, and then I later worked for another 10 years with another benevolent
one who maybe wasn't.
I don't know how benevolent he was. Yeah, but he was definitely super talented with Don Belisario. That the idea of being a benevolent dictator as a producer, where you are the final filter. I think gives a sense of control that is absolutely the 180 degrees from the lack of control you feel as an actor.
No, there's no question. I mean, the only time an actor is, we talk about, film being a director producer's medium. Anything that's sort of digital film is director producer's medium. When an actor is working in the theater, that's an actor's medium. And when that curtain goes up and you step out, you're on, and it's on you, and you have to make it happen. And you are completely free and powerful in that moment. And I think that you don't get that as an actor in front of a camera. There are too many people that have, and really for good reason. And there's so much good in that. I mean, sitting with an editor, crafting a performance, and that's what you are doing with an editor in a room, is you are crafting a performance with the material that you have available to you. The actor is the paint on your palette, but that paint is being balanced with a lot of other paint from other people to make a whole experience that's hopefully enjoyable to watch. I loved working with Ferry. I know we're jumping all over the place, Patrick. I loved working with David because I think David would have been an amazing actor if that's what he wanted to do. David occurs so organically in front of a camera. He's incredible on camera, and he's funny. He's smart. He's empathetic. He's the intelligence just radiates off of him. He's really, really a special
Your book
talent.
made me want to watch a show hosted by a guy I'd never heard of about golf, of which I've never played. But your book is so good. I'm like,
I don't play
out.
either. Yeah. No, he's really a special talent. He's a very special talent.
Okay, so we're I know we're jumping all the way around.
We're going
here.
way over time now, aren't we? Yeah.
We are, but it's all good because it's very interesting. I wanted to talk to you, but it doesn't have to be a long time. I don't know much about you until I read the book.
Other than the time we've spent on the road together and on set together, and it's right. We don't know.
Who's listening when you're
each
talking?
other well, but I've always liked you. I like you, and
same
I've
here.
Always felt like I've always liked you.
The funny thing was, as I was going through this, I realized that there's a scene that you did with me in JAG, and I think that's the only time that you and I have ever had a scene together, even though we were on Little House together.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you.
JAG.
Yeah, you were playing a judge on JAG, and I'm like all freaked out because I didn't do my homework, and you kind of like rail me and give me like you were in a very un-Almanzo performance. You were basically mean to me. And so before I get to this other question, which I want to bring up about you and Catherine ruining my life. So you came on the show and took away the fact that Laura doesn't play with kids anymore, which got rid of me. And then they killed my mom in the blind school fire.
Oh my God!
And
Yeah, it's just one bad thing after another.
One bad thing after another. And then they killed my mom in the blind school fire. They moved Merlin and I off to Sleepy Eye, which there's never been a better named town to put people that you're never going to see again, into this backdoor pilot where Merlin is the sheriff of this town while they have this shipping business. And so that was the backdoor pilot called A New Beginning, which Merlin was going to be starring in this show as Jonathan Garvey, and I played Andy Garvey, and I was going to be on this show with Merlin. Well, NBC didn't want that. They wanted Merlin, but they wanted it in a different way, which ended up being Father Murphy, which is where Catherine comes in. Wow. And so she takes my paw, and then you get this guy named Timothy Gibbs, who looks just like me, to play like another orphan. Michael loves his orphans.
Wow.
And like I'm watching the show, I only watched one because I couldn't watch any more, of this kid who looks like me with my paw. And I'm like, I was very close with Merlin, and it was a real emotional thing not to have him around anymore. Yeah. And it was like, son of a bitch, there goes my show. And thanks to you and thanks to your wife. So yeah, congratulations. She was great. But between you two, you kind of
destroyed your life.
It all. You destroyed my life, which brings me to Broadway.
Okay. What else is there? Okay.
How does Broadway I mean, I know, look, let's be honest, not that we're not. The fact that you got onto Broadway, I think, is a direct relationship to, holy shit, this guy who's got like all of these, young fans, let's bring him in. And you were talented. So they said, there's reason enough. And so you got onto Broadway and then you went to Japan. So you're doing a Sondheim musical, which is not easy to do.
Two Sondheim. The only musicals
Into
I've
the
done
Woods
on a big stage are 3 Sondheim musicals: Into the Woods, West Side Story, and Company. Those are the 3 musicals that I've
Why
done.
did I
did was
West
not
Side
Bobby
Story was
in
Bernstein.
Company. Patrick Cassidy was Bobby in that production, but it was with Carol Burnett, and it was in Southern California, and it was a great time. But I was a supporting player in that. But in West Side Story,
by the way, I played Carol Burnett's son in a pilot. How sweet is Carol Burnett?
Oh my God.
Right?
She is incredible. Incredible.
Yeah.
And just radiates goodness and decency and honor. There's just something very, very good about Carol Burnett. The first show I ever did going back to high school was our production of Once Upon a Mattress, which Carol Burnett made famous in 1959 on Broadway, playing Winifred the Woebegone. And
now, is this before you stole the whole pilot or play from the Mark Twain? Before you stole?
Oh yes, that was before that. Okay. Yes, where I went and did a little piece of Mark Twain Tonight in my high school gym, and Hal Holbrook threatened to sue me
because that's how actors feel. How dare you steal my work? Exactly. Okay, so obviously there's I'm sure 1,000 stories, but the thing that I'm picturing, which again, your book, I truly honestly recommend it. It's a really great read. It's a very easy read, and it's very interesting. Yeah. And you posit these bizarre, crazy stories in a very normal way, so that if you're not listening or reading it carefully, you might miss out, which is you're performing West Side Story, right? Again, about the Sharks and the Jets, bad boys. You're a good guy.
Yeah, I'm a
in
good
Japan.
Guy. In Japan.
How much do you think they understood what you were saying?
I think the Japanese.
How was your experience?
Okay, so the Japanese have a love affair with West Side Story, and I think it's the dancing of West Side Story that they absolutely love. So this was like a museum recreation of West. This was directed by Alan Johnson, who was in the original Broadway production, working for Jerome Robbins. He was one of 2 directors who were sanctioned to create productions of West Side Story. We did run-throughs for Jerome Robbins in New York before we went to Japan. He never said a word to me. I don't know that I was like his vision of what Tony should be, but what the hell?
But you'd already learned not to go up to him afterwards and go,
I said nothing to Jerome Robbins. Yeah, I did not speak to Jerome Robbins, and he didn't speak to me, so it was fine. But no, the Japanese have a love affair with this dancing, and there was, out in the audience, you could hear very subtly. They all had headphones on, so there's a translation going on for them as they're watching this. They are getting this in Japanese because obviously the production was fully in English. And there was one of the things that was just bizarre about this experience, and it was sort of wonderful, but bizarre, is that they didn't make a sound. There was no applause during the production after a song. It was after a song, a scene, an act break. It wasn't until the final curtain that they applauded, and it was thunderous applause. It was very respectful. I mean, but they didn't want to break your concentration during the show, so it was absolutely silence. It was like doing this very high pressure run through every night.
Yeah.
Because there was no feedback. And when you're working on the stage, so it sort of takes away half of the experience. The actor is providing something to the audience, but the audience is also providing something back to the actor. And
It sounds a lot
working
more
in
like
Japan,
a film where you're doing something and
Yeah.
and no one can respond.
Yeah, it does. It is a little bit that way. What was nice is that you didn't have to worry about the rhythm of a scene being broken by a cough or a sneeze or a laughter, a laugh that came at the wrong moment that would throw the timing of something off. There was none of that. It was literally, we delivered this as it was rehearsed every night, and it was just a very smooth run through. And of course, it has.
Were you
all the
doing
pressure of the
matinees?
music. Oh, of course. Yeah.
Okay, so if you've never done a show, you do the matinee, and then you're probably there, and you have dinner, and then you relax
you don't
a little
leave.
bit, and you do your night
Right.
show. Did you have any
Yeah.
downtime there? And if you did, what did you do in Japan?
I was a monk. I really was. I had never sung 8 shows a week before doing that. And this is like, this is really one of those shows that
Yeah.
B flat at the top of Maria, which is like your 4th song or 3rd song in the, like, Tony's show, the first 17 minutes of West Side Story is the majority of Tony's show. He has other things that he has to do, but vocally,
Once again,
you are-
when casting an Italian guy named Tony, I think of Dean
sure.
Butler.
No, I put some dark eyebrows on, and I had a lot of pomade in my hair, so it looked darker.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, it was. But Little House was hugely so. Not only did the Japanese love West Side, but the Japanese loved Little House, and that's the reason I was cast. Jack Wagner was supposed to do this tour. He, for some reason, had to drop out of it. Maybe he had some golf that he needed to play. I mean, Jack Wagner had this sort of this very cool vibe about him, and he was obviously a huge daytime star with General Hospital, and a great golfer. I mean, scratch golfer.
We had
But he had
on
to
our show See Dad Run that we did over at Nickelodeon, we had him play this professional golfer, and his daughter on the show was dating the son on our show. So we had Jack for that exact reason. And yeah, he's very Jack Wagner-y.
Yeah,
So,
I mean,
okay. So here we are.
Yeah.
You've had this experience with, all these huge experiences on Broadway and everything. We now do these autograph signing things where we get to go out and meet everybody and sign autographs.
Yeah. Yeah.
What's like the Cliff's Notes for you on how you feel about that and what your experience is with those when you're getting out there with the people?
So, yeah. So for me, it's for Little House, and all these events are for Little House that I do. And when you're doing them, you have so many different things that you could do events for. But for me, it's
but you do too. You have
Little
Buffy.
House.
I mean, have you ever done a Buffy convention?
I have never done a Buffy event. I have never been I got a Buffy trading card, but I've never been invited to a Buffy event. And I would
seems
go
weird. It
if I
seems
were
like that would
invited,
be
but I've
something
never.
Yeah,
I've never been invited, and I've got some pictures too, so that I could sign. I mean, it would be fine. So for me, doing these events, what I feel most strongly about with these events is, people have a sense of what Little House was and who we all were in that situation. Mm-hmm. It's very important to me to give people who come to see us, I want them to feel when they finish with me. I can't calculate what everybody else is doing, but I think most of us feel the same way. For me, I want people who come to see me, who come up to the table and buy something, talk, whatever it is that they want to do. I want them to go away feeling like they've met the guy that they've been watching for years. And I want that experience to be a consistent one for them. That's really important to me, that I give people that.
Thankfully, I think that the reality is that
it's bigger than all of us.
You're very close to Almanzo,
of course,
in as much as that,
he is me, I am he, and he is me. I mean, that's it.
Yes, and no. I think you're a lot smarter than he was, but I also think he's probably a lot more handy than you are. But what I love about watching you do these things is, I get it. But still, yeah, I mean, come on. You can't drive a buckboard. Almanzo could.
I can't now. And once you, it's like riding a bike. Once you've driven a buckboard, you can always drive a buckboard. Once you've ridden a horse,
driven
you
a
can always
buckboard
ride
into a tree, you can always.
That was the first day, first hour. I got past that.
So what I like about what you do at these conventions or these events is I see you take on the mantle of wanting to let people know the history of it. And you've never been a me person. You're super inclusive of the whole experience. And so I think that because I've been to a ton of these different, conventions where, a guy can fall down and break his leg in front of a guy's table. And the guy behind the table will somehow turn that into a story about how I was on Starsky and Hutch and I broke my leg. And it's like, dude, just calm down. But with you, you care about the show. You care about the history of the show. You care about the people that put the show together. And of course, we all care about Michael. My big thing is always, you have no idea of how funny Michael Landon was because he never really showed that as much as it really was evident on the set.
We'll be back after these messages.
Hey there, my name is Patrick Labyorteaux, and I play an actor on TV. And I also have this acting school called Working Actors School. And what we do there is we teach people to act using Zoom. So you can take an acting class with me and with a person in Connecticut, in Florida, and San Diego all at the same time, thanks to the miracle of Zoom. Now, besides classes, I also offer a one-on-one session. It's an hour just between you and me working on a particular piece of material, whether it's for an upcoming audition or maybe you're working on something and you need to have that breakthrough moment. These are really, really fun, and they're really, really great because they're really personalized and intense in all the good ways that intense can be. So if you're working on something, if you want to break through, if you want to have a one-on-one session where you're not working with other people, this is the way to do it. All the information is in the classes page on Working.
The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA is heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
Hi, this is Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast, a longtime reporter and an on-air contributor to CNBC. And if you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. So each week on Big Technology, I bring on key actors from companies building AI tech and outsiders trying to influence it, asking where this is all going. They come from places like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, and plenty more. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, in meetings with your colleagues, and at dinner parties, listen to Big Technology Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Actorsschool.com. Act 4. Questions. Okay, so towards the end of this, we do this questionnaire. I want to give you a questionnaire here.
Okay.
And so
questionnaire?
These are
this is like a quiz?
Yeah, it's like a quiz, but you can't get anything wrong, okay?
Okay, yeah,
so,
sure. I got it.
You got 5 questions here. This one's called That's Showbiz. What's the most Hollywood moment in your life?
Most Hollywood moment in my life. Well, and I should just be able to, what you're looking for is like instant answer here.
No. I mean, there's not, I just don't want anybody to to edit. So it seems like you're really thinking about it. So that care.
Yeah, I am thinking about it. So I remember before I premiered on the show, Michael took a clip of me onto The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. And so he played this first scene, the scene after the big mud fight in Back to School. And there's the sweet scene between Almanzo and Laura. And, it's just, and I remember coming at the end of that, Johnny Carson looked to Michael and he said something like, where do you find these people that are so real and so natural? mean, something like that. It was a very sincere question from John. And Johnny Carson, Johnny Carson wasn't always looking for the joke. He knew when it was time to be funny, and he knew when he didn't have to be funny. And this was one of those moments when he asked a very genuine question of Michael, and Michael dropped my name on The Tonight Show. And I hadn't even premiered on the episode yet. And I thought, oh my God, I have arrived. I've just been seen on The Tonight Show by whatever that audience number was, and talked about by Michael and Johnny Carson in that situation. That's a pretty Hollywood moment. Pretty cool moment. I mean, I love that.
It's not like Johnny Carson hosted a podcast and no one watched it.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Okay.
Yes.
What's the opposite, the most embarrassing Hollywood moment?
Oh my God. I mean, it has to be something with, it has to, oh, okay. Well, I write about it in the book when I'm doing the scene with Michael and he, I'd studied stage fighting and I sort of knew what that was. I understood in principle, but for some reason in this one scene that we were doing, I was not backing off. And I blew 3 takes, really struggling with Michael, and he didn't like that. And on the 4th take, he picked me up and threw me across this barn. I have this recollection of sailing through the air, flailing, I was probably, I don't know what Michael weighed, but I certainly was a good 4 to 5 inches taller than he was. If he was not wearing his lifts, 3-4 inches. But Michael was strong as a bull, and he literally picked and threw. I was like a rag doll flying through the air and rolling out in that. And the crew, I remember Johnny Musselman, who was our craft service man. Johnny was laughing under his breath at this because he had told me like 3 times, go limp. Each time he said it was a little more emphatic, go limp. And I didn't go limp. And I can't explain it. It's one of those mysteries to me that I felt like I'm always pretty good at following in direction. For some reason, I couldn't do it in that moment. And when Michael threw me across the barn and I rolled out, and I just remember saying, like, what the hell? But that was an embarrassing Hollywood moment because I should have known better.
That lines up, but I also goes back to my theory. I think he's threatened. But yeah, he was freakishly strong. He would tell us kids stories about Dan Blocker being freakishly strong. And I think that he admired that. But also, I mean, the guy was working out at the gym all the time as well. Yeah. I mean, he would take his lunch hours and go over to the gym. Okay, third question. This one is called Show Me the Money.
These answers are probably way too long. Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
No, that's fine. What's your biggest missed financial opportunity? And you don't have to give numbers, but like, what do you wish you had done different?
Oh, wow. I wish that's a great question and a very revealing question. And I write in the book that I went through a pretty big financial reverse within, this is sort of like the guy who's the NFL player, and within, 3 years after the time that you're in that world, you can go pretty sideways. I think that the thing that, and I would advise anybody who's watching this, if you have a 401k or a pension that's you're building for yourself, do anything you can do to avoid tapping into that before it's really time to tap into that.
You lose your future and you're taxed doubly on it.
Yeah, I mean, not only are you set. I had a manager who was telling me, you're eating your kitchen. You're eating your kitchen as you're not living in your kitchen. You're eating your kitchen, and he was right about that. I wasn't sure what else to do, because of course you have this lifestyle and you want that lifestyle to continue.
Yeah.
I think, and I was embarrassed by the thought that I maybe needed to do something else because it wasn't going the way it needed to go for me to be spending the kind of money that I was spending. And I think that if I had had more perspective, and I think, I got this perspective so clearly when Catherine and I got married. Catherine, who'd always done other things along the way, while she'd had a very nice career as an actress, but she was always doing something else. So she didn't have all her eggs in that basket, and she had no pretenses about it. I have lots of pretenses about it, and I needed to preserve an image. So it's like it's pride stuff, it's vanity stuff. If that financial, that for me, if I could have avoided, if I'd been more in charge of myself to avoid the vanity, or to be able to get past the vanity of doing something, I'd have a lot more money in the bank today invested. I mean, a lot more money in there, not saying amounts, if I hadn't burned it as I was going in the late 80s into the early 90s. And
it's a hard transition to make, because the reality is that you are making money that is obscene to begin with, except it's obscene because you think that you're earning it when you're definitely earning it. But what it's paying for is all those years that you didn't make money, and paying for all those years that you won't make money. So you've got to sop it up. And so the idea is that
I didn't process that, Patrick. I didn't process.
No, and no one does on their first show, and no one does on their until they realize, until they've lost it. I got a job in between Little House and Jag, and I got this food delivery job, and I delivered to this house. And there's a whole story I tell on TikTok, but it ended up being Joe Walsh was the guy that I was delivering the food to from the Eagles.
Like the Eagles, Joe Walsh.
Yeah, the Eagles, Joe Walsh.
Okay.
And so I open the door, or the lady opens the door. Yeah, the lady opens the door, and I've got like my food that I'm going to be delivering to them, and she goes, "Oh my God, are you from Little House on the Prairie?" And like, she recognizes me, which is the worst nightmare event you could ever have as an actor.
Yeah.
Because here I am in this, I'm in a delivery outfit with a bow tie and like a black apron, and I'm like, "Here's your steak." And they go, "Oh my God, you're on Little House on the Prairie." And they had just had sex, this girl and Joe Walsh. I could tell because they were wearing
I think Joe Walsh
robes.
Probably had a lot of sex with a lot of people. Yeah.
Oh, I'm sure he did. But in this day, it was this particular girl. And so Joe Walsh walks down the stairs, and I'm like, the bill said Joseph Walsh, so it didn't even occur to me. But Joe Walsh walks down, and she turns to him. She goes, "Oh my God, Joe, this guy used to be on the Little House on the Prairie." And he looks at me, and he looks at her, and he looks at me, and he goes, "I used to be in the Eagles." And it was like the best answer that I had ever heard. It's like, yeah, you did. Yeah, and no one cares. And I don't, it's like you care about the Eagles, but it's like he kind of put it all into perspective. And once you have that, it sounds like reading your book. There was a conversation with Catherine. You move on. Your ego moves on. Okay. Show and tell. As a teenager, favorite poster in your room, and how did you come to obtain it?
So my favorite poster was my brother and I had posters of John Brody and Gene Washington, who were stars of the San Francisco 49ers in the early 70s. And we had sports posters on our wall. And so it was, John Brody in the San Francisco Bay Area. John Brody had been a star at Stanford and was a star with the 49ers. And Gene Washington was a great wide receiver of his era. And we had their posters on our wall. I mean, that's like automatic. Years later, I met John Brody on an NBC event to Atlantic City. And I'm doing this event with Jessica Savage and John Brody, and I'm trying to think of who else was there. I don't remember who else was there. I was asked a very embarrassing question at a press conference. at that event. But after that event was over, we flew up to Atlantic City in a helicopter and flew back to Manhattan in a helicopter. And it was probably, it was like midnight.
Right.
And John Brody was not ready to shut it down. He said, let me take you around to some jazz clubs. So I ran all over Manhattan that night, going to New York's best jazz clubs with one of the heroes of my youth, hanging out with John Brody in jazz clubs. And he was the nicest guy, just a terrific guy. And that's a very memorable night for me. And I don't even remember what the question was.
That's a great story. No, that's great.
What was the question?
Answer.
I don't even remember.
As a teenager, favorite poster in your room, and how did you get
John
it?
Brody. Yeah, John Brody. That's how it started. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, final question for this quiz. It's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show. So, what is my best performance?
I always thought, as I watched you on Jag, I loved what you did on Jag because you were funny, but you were clearly there to provide a flavor on that show, which was very serious, but you were Bud was the comic relief, but you didn't do it like punchline funny. You were real funny. You were awkward and charming and likable. You're just a real guy. And I think you're super talented. I mean, you have done so many different kinds of things. I mean, you've been, in Heathers, and you're the goofball in summer school. You're all these things. But I really like what you did on Jag because it just was simple and it was real. And look, you were working in that same zone of your talent with Little House. I mean, that's like you weren't the funny guy. You were just the kid. And I think you probably did have funny things. But with Jag, you were very specifically the funny guy that was like taking the pressure off of very tense moments. And
well, congratulations. That's the right answer. Really well. And that's probably the best answer you've given all day. Okay, so here we get to the plugs. Now, the plugs here are usually going to be like, I'll hold up your book or show a picture of your book and go out and buy his book. It's really good. But I read this one, and I definitely want to honestly tell you, I'm not going to have you plug it because it just is weird.
Okay.
You really should go buy this book or buy the audio book. He does a great job in sharing with you an experience that not a lot of people have had. Truly. I mean, have you ever been on a TV show? And so here's a normal guy. Here's how it happened. He shows you what his life is like. He tells it in plain English in a way that is super relatable for, a broken industry person like myself or a person who has never been in the industry. So I want to really, truly hype the book because it's really good. It's not a disaster of the week story where it's like, and then, I sold my body in the Philippines no, it's about a guy who has this and is having this great life. And I'm so happy that you found Catherine. I'm kind of, not really thrilled with you that it took you so long to close that deal, but it sounds like it's, it's worked out.
No, it has.
So I'm gonna recommend the book.
23 years married now. 23 years married.
Okay, good for you. It took you 20 years to get it to that point.
Yes,
but any last words or any last things you want to say or mention? You can talk about the book or anything. But I mean, I
need to show you something. Hey, I'm going to get up for a second. I need to get something that I got in Tombstone this weekend.
Okay.
All right.
While he's gone, we can talk about him behind his back.
There was an artist in Tombstone that was doing pictures of people, and he said, "I'm sorry he's not here this weekend because I made this for him." And and there you are. There's Andy Garvey.
You want to know what's stupid about that picture? Not the artisan. The artisan is amazing. So we were going. They would take photos of us for the cast photos. And we were heading out to Las Vegas to visit our family. And my brother and I got into this. My brother played Albert, if you don't know. We got into this competition over the years of like how fast we could get our wardrobe on or off. So for the most part, we had our regular street clothes underneath our clothing so that we could then just take off our wardrobe and then we're ready to go.
Are you serious?
I had a watch. And if you look, I'm covering my hand like this to cover the watch. And so I'm standing there with my hand on my wrist.
Look at it. Look at Andy Garvey covering his wrist.
Covering his watch. The most hilarious thing is if I went online to find this photo, there are many photos where I'm covering my wrist like this and you can see the watch. It's a ridiculous mistake. But that's amazing. I mean, that is
so. This will go really well. This will go really well on your brick wall. I have to get this to you.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Epilogue.
Well, Dean, thank you for a really great read. Thank you for your time. Thanks for going over. Thanks for all the stories. Really enjoyed talking to you, man.
Patrick, you have a wonderful gift for. I mean, we talked about some things today that I've never really openly talked about. I may regret having talked about them, but you just asked really nice questions. You ask it in a really engaging way. And so wanting to give your audience, the straight stuff, I answered candidly, and that's you that creates the environment for that. So thank you for that. You're terrific, and you've always been terrific, and I always wish you well. And, look, you've got your acting school going and all kinds of other things. You write scripts for movies that get made for $1.98 plus, other things. I mean, you're a busy guy. Thank you for having me. I think there are going to be some more Little House appearances in your future if you want them. And I think
of course. I love you
guys. I just put that out there to you because I think there are going to be some things coming along.
Thanks again for coming out. Thank you for being honest. And again, I cannot recommend your book enough, not because it's my buddy, but it's just one of the best books I've read about the industry because it's a real life story about what really happens. All right, guys.
Prairie Man, My Little House Life and Beyond. Prairie Man, My Little House Life and Beyond. Yeah, I'm sorry I don't have a copy. I'd hold it up right now, but
no, yeah. I'll throw up a picture. It's you in a hat. So, There we go. Take care, bud. Thanks.
All right, man.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for listening. I'm really, really glad you're here and checking out the podcast. It is an audio podcast wherever you get your podcasts. It's a video podcast over on YouTube or on Spotify or wherever you get the video ones. All my socials are Working Actors School on TikTok, on Instagram, and on YouTube. Please check us out. If you want any information about the school, it is at workingactorsschool.com. We've got classes going on all the time. And again, thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time.
It's the Patrick Labyorteaux Show. Patrick Labyorteaux. He's the one you gotta know.
The Bleacher Report app is your destination for sports. Right now, the NBA's heating up, March Madness is here, and MLB is almost back. Every day there's a new headline, a new highlight, a new moment you've got to see for yourself. That's why I stay locked in with the Bleacher Report app. For me, it's about staying connected to my sports. I can follow the teams I care about, get real-time scores, breaking news, and highlights all in one place. Download the Bleacher Report app today so you never miss a moment.
Hi, this is Alex Kantrowitz. I'm the host of Big Technology Podcast, a longtime reporter and an on-air contributor to CNBC. And if you're like me, you're trying to figure out how artificial intelligence is changing the business world and our lives. So each week on Big Technology, I bring on key actors from companies building AI tech and outsiders trying to influence it, asking where this is all going. They come from places like NVIDIA, Microsoft, Amazon, and plenty more. So if you want to be smart with your wallet, your career choices, in meetings with your colleagues, and at dinner parties, listen to Big Technology Podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
If you like the show, please take a moment to rate, review, and subscribe. It really does help the show to grow. Thank you for listening.
Hey, we're Stacy and Pete, and we host We Don't Want to Grow Up, a podcast all about those warm and fuzzy memories from the 80s, 90s, and early 2000s.
We're revisiting the pop culture, toys, and memories that shaped a generation.
Gen X, Millennials, and I'm over here representing the Zennials. So if you ever experienced waiting for your Delia's catalog to show up after school, or if you got lost wandering the aisles of Toys R Us, this show's for you. You can listen to us everywhere podcasts are available.